Well, here we are once again, live at 6:45. Okay, I went on a little bit early, but that's okay. Um, so I am here on Wellington Street, which keeps going, and I have um, I have taken advantage as the rain, the sudden rainfall suddenly kind of swept out a lot of the crowds, and so I'm taking advantage. And it's funny, I never would have thought that I would be able to film from the middle of the street, but this is a pedestrian-only street at the moment, and it's quite fun. So here I am, Wellington Street, not very not far from where I live, and I very much enjoy it down here. It's almost its own little village here in Verdun. So as you guys can see, nope. Well, welcome to Not Technically Perfect with me, your host, Richard Struther. And tonight we're going to be talking about getting inked. Actually, not getting inked, not getting a tattoo. We're talking about inkjet printers and how they work. And I'm not the biggest fan of inkjet printers, and it's not for any reason of quality. Inkjet produces some very nice images, but there are some caveats and drawbacks to them. But let me let's not get ahead. Let me not get ahead of myself. Um, One thing that kind of inspired me to do this episode, and especially the way I'm doing it, is I was walking with a friend, and we happened across an art gallery where we saw something particularly cool. And I thought it was a beautiful illustration. If those of you remember, think back to those when I was talking about resolution. There is an artist who actually paints bubble wrap. So each bubble gets its own color. And this doesn't look like much. So what? But inkjet does exactly this, and it actually does it in the hex pattern that you see here. It puts ink to paper very much like a water pistol. The only difference is that the squirts it measures are in picoliters, which are so infinitesimally small, and it just does a lot of them. So again, the inkjet printers have to have a very high resolution. They plop down a lot of ink, but you'll know, of course, they don't pop it down in one big strip. They pop it down in very small strips. So, by the way, back to this image. Then, if you back off a little, you can actually see that it forms a very nice image, and that is just a section with the two towers of the church. But that is how an inkjet printer, or even a computer monitor, but a computer monitor doesn't do it with hexagonal. A computer monitor does it by a square grid. But anyhow, that is really, in a nutshell, how inkjet printers get an image out. And let's be honest, text is not really all that different. It's just, again, very refined. So I'm going to show you a really cool little gadget. Picked this up a little while ago, and it finally got delivered. It was months delayed in getting here, but that's fine. That's fine. This is actually an inkjet printer. So I'm going to show you now. I haven't used it okay, I did a test print earlier, but I know it works. But I'm going to show you something interesting. See, one of my first problems with inkjet, and I'm going to bring this up real close to the camera here. Do you guys see how it looks a little crusty up there? Right. These print heads are on a piece of foil, and they have again, you're dealing in picoliters. The holes are incredibly small, and in fact, the way it gets this done is the ink cartridges will have all of these pins, and then of course the printer will have matching heads that, or matching contacts that press onto the head. And that tells the ink cartridge what to shoot out of which hole. And you won't see it. I mean, even if I took a magnifying glass, you will not see the holes um, in that grill because it's just too fine. But let me turn this on. Now this thing is set. I currently have it set to print my logo. And the way this thing works, so let me go this way. Oh, hold on. There we go. And it's ready. So I'm going to touch the button to start printing, and I'm going to start printing this way. Or am I going the wrong way? There we go. Okay. So now I've done that. Now you'll notice that this is not printing. This is printing in orange and magenta, right? Which means that the yellow and the magenta are coming out. And by the way, print colors. In school when they tell you the pure colors are red, yellow, and blue. That's not entirely correct. For true perceptual color, it's cyan, which is a very light blue, magenta, yellow, and then we add black on top of that to give that extra punch, because if you put those three together, you can get a very dark brown, but dark brown isn't black, so black is its own color. So what we need to do with a print head, and this is something that anybody who's owned and operated a printer knows very well, you have to clean the heads. Now, the thing is most of the time the printer takes care of this job for you. This one, on the other hand, it's just a little too small. So I have some trusty isopropanol, and I'm going to try not to bleach myself again with this, because so just to give you an idea, I used to work with really, really big inkjet printers. And I don't mean like, yeah, there was a little bit of ink involved. No, I'm talking like 4 foot wide by 8 foot printing table. So the actual printer was a good 12 feet long by about 5 feet wide. The roll printers were notorious for doing horrible, horrible things. So now I have cleaned off, and you'll notice that it looks a little stained. So I have cleaned off this head, and I'm seeing that the ink is flowing a little more freely. I am not using toilet paper for this. These are napkins. The reason I favor a stronger paper product is because you don't want to get lint in there. Lint is huge, and it will obstruct, and obstructions are not good. So let's go back to the print and try this out. Let's flip this over here, and I'm going to press again. And apparently it doesn't want to print that way. And now apparently it's just blocked more. So you see, this is one of the things that I don't like about inkjet, is that they tend to get a little bit stuck. I don't mean that in the social sense, although it kind of looks that way to the user. So let's see, can we get something decent out of this? I'm getting a lot of magenta and yellow. So that is causing quite a mess. And you see, it's quite a messy process. So yes, back to the isopropanol story. At one time, I was working with a big printer, huge. The ink cartridges were not cartridges. They were dye, like like the type that clothing stores use to mark the clothing. They were straight up dye, and I had one of them explode on me, and I was magenta up to mid-arm, and all over my shirt. Like the shirt was gone. Forget it. You're never getting it. Shit, it was a cool pattern. So I kept it for a short time, but it was very, very bad. And nonetheless, I needed to use isopropanol because it's dye, and you need to use the isopropanol right away. So I literally bleached my arms to above my elbows, and they were white, like white. Insane. Let's see if I can get this going now. Oh, didn't like that direction. No. Yeah, now it's not even going to work. So, can you get it? Nope, now it doesn't even want to work. Well, hold on. I'm not going to spend my whole time here fiddling with it, but you get the idea. If it were cleaned off, it does have this little rubber cleaner. If we get this cleaned off properly, then you will notice that we actually get a nice printout. The only problem that I have with these inkjet printers very much is the price. I mentioned this in a previous video. Ink is expensive. Just to give you an idea, you know what? I'm going to turn this off for just a second. I'm going to show you something here. Open this up, and I will take out the print cartridge. Or actually, you know what? I'm not going to take out the print cartridge, but this little print cartridge here, and while it is printing in small strips, right? It is printing in small strips. That little print cartridge is $100. Now, it's not a common printer, so this printer cartridge is rare. So yes, $100 is excessive. But just to give you an idea, even the most common inkjet printers, the cartridges run upwards of $40 to $50, considering that they're good for usually about 800 pages. Not even. They're good for under 1,000 pages. So you got to figure that's $4 for 100. Um, yeah, so let's see, what about $80 for 1,000 sheets. It's still a lot per sheet, and the more coverage you put on, of course, the less sheets it's good for and whatnot. I find that very, very expensive. Your average print cost, including, because if you want to print photos, well, then you have to use special paper, which is not, it's paper, but it also has a layer that is, and I'm not kidding, it's basically a sponge. It is an absorbent layer. It is a sponge. That paper is expensive in and of itself. That's a good, 20 cents a sheet, plus your ink that runs upwards of usually about 32 to almost 50 cents a sheet. So when you compare that with laser, which uses toner, you don't have to clean for the toner. The machine does that on its own. It doesn't waste any toner while doing it. It literally just primes everything up. The toner shoots onto the paper, it lays it down, and then it bakes it on. And they're ready to go one shot instead of the inkjet printer, which you have to fight with it to get it to print, once nicely. If you use, now here's the thing, if you use the printer every single day, the print cartridge pretty much remains primed. It may have to do like a slight cleaning in the morning, but that's about it. If, however, you get to a laser like a month later, it just goes. And it's cheap. Laser black and white runs anywhere between 2 to really expensive 14 cents a sheet. Color can run anywhere from 8 cents to about, let's say, 25 cents a sheet, as opposed to color inkjet, which can run upward 80 cents to $1 a print. So yeah, there's a big difference in price there, and the fact that it's just like laser is ready to go. Yes, it takes longer to for the printer to turn on, and they are more expensive on the outset. But the inkjet gets you in the, oh yeah, the printer's cheap. Yeah, the printer's cheap, but the ink is expensive, and replacing the ink is usually as much as buying the whole new printer. So, oh, we have a chat here. Yeah, bubble wrap pixels. I love that. Yeah. What do I think of rental printers? Okay, so if you're a business, there are companies that will lease you a larger printer or photocopier, and these photocopiers are really, really good, and they're designed for high volume. And this company is going to ask you what your volume is, and they're going to have a service contract and a certain number of prints you can do per month, and you pay them. The beauty of that is kind of like leasing a car. It's still technically the dealership's car. So if anything goes wrong, it's on them. Like really, you pay your lease. Your service contract is part of your lease. And if something goes really, really wrong with the car, they have to swap it out. So I think renting a really, really good printer for an office and consolidating everything. I always recommend having a backup printer because stuff happens. There are days where it just kind of all goes wrong, and that happens. But one way or the other, I recommend these deals. If you print enough to warrant the monthly contract, yeah, it's a good idea. Why not? And you can get some really, really, really nice copiers that can do faxing and a whole bunch of other stuff. And they are high capacity. They are designed to produce high quality. So I do like that idea. And thank you for the question. That was awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Wow, I didn't think I'd go that long with this one, but here we are. It was harder to clean the printer, and finally, but in the end, you will notice on the initial that I was able to get a clean. You can get a good image out of an inkjet printer, but it's not always the easiest. It's not always the easiest to get. So a lot of ink wasted in that, and I don't really. That's not really one of my favorite parts. So anyhow, just my opinion. If you guys want to talk more about it, you know what? Here's the email address. Although, for those of you tuning in regularly, and you can just comment on any one of the videos. I see them all. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 6:45 for Not Technically Perfect.